All right, hey there, everyone. It's Justin here from the Wedding Insider podcast. Today I have Christina Droumtsekas. Is that right, Christina?
Yes, it is.
Of Pink Poppi, and she's going to share with us a whole bunch of information and knowledge that she has about wedding flowers. I personally know nothing about this, so I'm excited to learn. So I'm excited to have you on. Thanks so much, Christina. And the first thing we're going to start off with is can you just kind of let me know and let everyone else know how long you've been in the wedding industry and how you kind of got into making flowers for people. Or I guess you don't make the flowers, you arrange the flowers, right?
Yeah. Well, I started, this is going into year four, and I started working with the flower shop after planning my own wedding and dealing with various vendors and stuff. So I found that there was a lacking in doing it. I'm a graphic artist by trade,
Oh,
so
cool.
getting into yeah, so getting into the flowers was just like another extension of being creative. I look at flowers as if they're colors, the shapes, the textures, so not necessarily what flower. It's not like I'm crazy about X amount of flowers or roses or peonies. I love all flowers because each flower has its own unique coloring and shape and texture. So when I started the business, it was 4 years ago. I had worked with my designer who's working with me now. He had designed my centerpieces and stuff, and we worked well together, and it was something I really enjoyed doing. And a few years later, I decided that there was definitely a niche for it in our area, which is Kitchener-Waterloo,
Hmm.
and decided to start up a shop, an event florist. And we do everyday flowers as well, but primarily focusing on weddings and events. And
Nice.
I haven't looked back since. I love it.
Cool. Yeah, that's really awesome. I've been doing this for about 4 years now too, so we started around the same time.
This is the fourth year, so
Cool. Um,
time flies.
so to kind of get into it, what can couples do to find, like, obviously you had problems, maybe you did end up finding a good vendor, but obviously you were looking for a flower vendor and obviously noticed that there was some lacking. Like, how can brides and grooms find good florists for their wedding? Where would you suggest they look?
I think when you're looking online and you're getting ideas and you meet with the people, the one piece of advice I give to all my couples is book vendors that you like and you have a connection with, because these are the vendors that are going to work for you and not against you. I find that in this industry, some people out there, they'll just it's not important. It's not that it's not important to them, but they don't put their heart and soul into it.
Hmm.
And I find if you have a connection, weddings are very stressful, and especially as you're getting closer to the date, you find that the stresses are running higher. They bring out the best and the worst in people, and if you're relying on a vendor that you didn't have a nice connection with, you're going to find that you're fighting against that. So I always tell that's the only piece of recommendation, not necessarily just for a florist, but for everybody. If you sit down and you meet this person and you feel like you've got a great connection with them, you should go with them because you know they're going to work their hardest for you. And so when I tell my couples when I meet them, I say, if you feel great, I'm going to, put 120% into my work for you.
Cool. Yeah,
So
that's.
finding a vendor is meeting them and having that connection.
No, I totally agree. I think it's um, something that's really important for such a stressful and important and day that you're spending a lot of time and money organizing and planning. Like, work with people that you
Yeah.
like and that you get along with is like the top advice. I've had other people say that too, and I totally agree. I think it's really important. Is there anything like where would a bride and groom even start their search to get to those interviews with people, with florists that
I
they
thought
might work with?
Well, a great place to start too is, I mean, brides and like couples will always book their venues first because they want to make sure that they get the date that they're looking for.
Hmm.
And a lot of the venues that you work with have a select vendor list, and there's a reason for it. The venues have been in business for X amount of years, and they work well with these vendors that they're recommending, and they have a chance to see their work time and time again and different. So if a venue recommends somebody, it's fantastic. That's a great place to start. And then usually people know somebody or they
Yeah.
have friends who got married and they were at that wedding. So always go by a recommendation, I find, versus just cold calling sometimes, because then at least you know that person has firsthand experience. And whether you were at a friend's wedding and you saw the flowers there and you absolutely love them, then you contact them because you've seen their work firsthand. A lot of times, you go and meet somebody, and it's hard to say, but some people will take work from the internet and claim it as their own and say, well, this is what I've done. And when it comes time to your wedding, you're like, well, that's not what you showed me. So getting a recommendation or a referral from venues, friends, and other vendors, I think is really important and a great start for a couple.
Yeah, that's pretty sketchy. Or that could not.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that when you work with a venue, that you go in there and those people that work at this venue have seen your work and they can attest to it firsthand and
Yeah,
say
for
yes,
sure.
and we've never had a complaint about this vendor or anything. And so I think that's really a great starting point for a couple.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Um, so also the other thing I really honestly know nothing about is how much it costs to have flowers at your wedding. Like I know there's probably such a giant range that's such a difficult question to answer, but like what like if somebody's just starting out and trying to create a budget and trying to start out with how much they should like where should they what's a good starting range at least for what a wedding would be?
If you're looking at like there's tons of blogs out there and advice columns that say when you're looking how to budget for flowers, and they usually say 10% of your budget is a great start. So
Okay.
if you're planning a $6,000 wedding, then $3,000 tends to be a nice starting
Mm-hmm.
point for a budget. um, Flowers range. So I mean, we have your everyday flowers and like your carnations, which are beautiful flowers, but they are a less expensive flower versus going into a unique orchid or a calla lily that are like three times the amount. So I think realistically, when people walk in, they need to set their expectations realistically. You can't walk in there and show a picture off of Pinterest that's a full bouquet and then tell your florist that I want this, I want all the flowers in it, and say, well, I'm only going to pay $20. When you go to a grocery store and you see that their little bouquets at $20, well, that's what you're getting at a grocery store. At a florist that brings in a higher quality of flowers, they're going to be a bit more pricey than that. So you
Yeah.
kind of put perspective that way.
Cool. Um, is there any way like is that is that something you when somebody comes in and they say they have a budget, do you try to pick like if somebody's less expensive or like how does that work? Like do you does or how does the process work of some of you trying to work within somebody's budget, I guess? That's what I'm trying to get out of my mouth.
It's not the first question out of my mouth with a couple. I
Mm,
find that I really want to get to know what they're looking for and their vision.
okay.
And so I'll spend my time, and that's the very end of my consultation with somebody is then I'll say, well, what's your budget? And then how I approach it when I give them their quote is that I let them know that I am going to quote them for everything that we've talked about because budget sometimes again you don't know if your budget's realistic or if it's over budget or whatnot. With me, because I offer some rentals of candles and such things, there's different things that we incorporate with the budget or with
Mm-hmm.
the quote. So I let them all know that I will do my best to keep within their budget, but I'm going to show them exactly what they wanted. And we go back and then we can make adjustments. So we can say, yes, the centerpiece that was, this big can now go down to something a bit smaller, and that price fits within their budget. But
Cool.
sometimes couples, because they don't know, they'll be like, no, quote me what we've asked for, and we'll see if we can make it work. And so that's, kind of how I approach each of my couples.
That's yeah, that sounds great because like I that's exactly it was like if I came in I'd have no idea where even what would even be reasonable to
Yeah,
plan.
it's an educational process as
Yeah.
well because you're right. You don't go out and buy flowers on a daily basis. And when you're looking at flowers en masse, you're ordering 25 centerpieces for some of these weddings, you really don't have a guideline to where you're going to start. So that's where, pictures are great, like a portfolio. So you want a vendor that's able to show you their own work, not pictures off the internet and say, yes, we can do that. Because then in their portfolio, they'll show you, yes, this is a $50 centerpiece, this was a $100 centerpiece. And it gives them a good frame of reference to have a comparison like that.
Cool.
And
Um
most guys don't.
wow,
It's the
yeah.
bride.
I'm generally gonna guess that most guys are not the people that are picking out the flowers, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
And anyways, yeah, I mean, that's either way they are somewhat involved in all parts of the wedding planning, it seems like. So um is there, so I looked up a few questions that kind of people were asking about wedding flowers. Is there, and one of the things that I noticed was that somebody was asking about silk wedding flowers. Is that something that anyone does, or is that like
Which flowers?
silk?
Silk. Oh, well, I don't offer it.
Yeah,
So with me, I kind of have a little bit of a rule of thumb with my studio, and I mean, I don't spray paint my flowers. I don't like coloring them. I don't like working with dyed. It's the way that the flowers are grown. That's what I like working with.
cool.
If somebody wants silk flowers, there's a lot of great florists out there that do like to work with them, and I may not be the right fit for them, so I would suggest somebody else. Just because
Mm-hmm.
it kind of, for me, it's fresh flowers. That's the way I like looking at things. And there are silk flowers that are more expensive than a regular flower, like a
Yeah, for
real
sure.
flower.
Okay, cool.
So it does get more pricey.
Yeah. What about 2014 flower trends? You know of any of those? Or do you try and stay at, I mean, I'm sure it's impossible to stay out totally outside of the trends, but like, is there any trends that brides should be aware of? And otherwise, like, what do you suggest?
Well, you know what? Everyone's unique. So people, when they're planning their day, they want a unique day. So they try not to really. I find most of the brides that come to me don't look at the trends.
Mm,
They'll say, like I've had a few that will say, "Oh, I want a Great Gatsby theme, but I don't want it to be that. I want to make it unique to us." I've had couples that it's personal. It's a personalized thing. Like I had a couple whose groom was a hunter, and so we wanted to incorporate feathers from the birds that he hunted. So that was one of the themes for it. I mean, we can go by Pantone Color of the Year, which is Radiant Orchid,
mm,
and people love, they'll tend to the color more so than a style. So I think the styles and themes of what weddings are really personal to the couple and what reflect them. If a couple is all about travel, then they want to incorporate travel into their weddings. So there's not necessarily a trend with it. It's just more being more natural and more true to who you are representing your couple versus putting, like if I want to make a big circus theme and that's kind of a dated theme for them. But if it's unique, I've had people incorporate Scrabble because they like to sit home and play Scrabble. So it's making it more personal versus following a
yeah,
trend.
yeah. I think that is a huge. I think it's just because of the internet and so many. You just have so many options. But I mean, every wedding I go to, it just seems to be very personalized. At least the ones that I work. I know that I kind of have a bit of a different um,
Yeah.
clientele myself that isn't just looking for the standard thing, but there's always some sort of personalization. So I think that's cool. That's a good answer. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
this is a quick note. I also saw some brides complaining about their bouquets getting mold on them after they're trying to preserve them. Do you have any suggestions on how, if they want to keep their bouquet, like what brides can do?
No, I've never tried preserving a bouquet personally. Flowers just, they have a lifespan and some flowers do attract more mold than another one.
Yeah.
I mean, these old tricks where people say spray your flowers with hairspray and put them in a dark closet, hang them upside down. Well, that works great for roses. I've never tried it with anything else. So for me, I don't know. I wouldn't even know what to suggest on that one, just
Okay.
because flowers will.
No, I think that's an honest answer is a good answer.
I
Because if you have
mean,
the
a preserved cake, unless you're dry freezing it or, and spending a large amount of money on something, a flower is not going to look fantastic when it's dried. Like
yeah,
it's going to turn brown. You're going to lose all that luster of it. And my suggestion is always make sure your photographer gets a fantastic photo of just your bouquet. And that's your way of looking back at it and saying, this is, it's beautiful.
yeah. No, that's awesome. I like that answer for sure. Um, and then I mean, it kind of sounds like I mean, I think you kind of answered this question, but what are some different like style options? So you kind of had said like, the trend is to be very personalized and that you try and personalize everything for each couple. is there some general trends or not trends, sorry, is there some general styling that maybe that you don't even do yourself, but that brides can even we can talk about a little bit in weddings?
Well, I mean, that kind of goes with the overall look. So if you're booking a wedding planner as well, wedding planners kind of gets in and steps in and be involved in that. With me, mine's more about like, how can we make your table look beautiful? So it's becoming a beautiful tablescape. One of the things that I like to do is any extra flowers that I have when I bring in for a wedding and I haven't used them for their centerpieces, they come on site with me. And if I find, especially if it's orchids or whatnot, I'll place them on the head table in individual place settings, and just gives it that little bit of extra. Or we put rose petals somewhere, or we put them, extra blooms laying around the centerpiece, and that just adds more to what they're looking for. Or, may not have been in their budget, but because we have the extra flowers, we use it. And I've had couples that will personalize, they bring in their own menus, and then we use a flower to tie around it, or some kind of green grass, and we tie that around. So there's things that you can incorporate, like a natural element, to elements that the bride and groom bring in themselves.
Cool. Um, Sorry, I
That's okay.
wasn't ready for the next question here.
Oh,
I'm still
was
getting
I
used to
supposed
this
to
whole
talk longer?
interviewing thing. Okay, so you had mentioned that when that you also do some at least candle rentals.
Hmm.
What is there any other services that you offer, and is there any other services that if if people are watching this and they're not in the Kitchener, Waterloo, or the GTA area, that they can be asking that other florists typically kind of offer as well, outside of just doing the centerpieces and the other flowers for the wedding?
Well, of course. I mean, so there's two kind of schools of thought with florists. You'll have your regular florist that has their everyday flower shop, and you have an event florist. So if you tend to go to like an everyday flower shop and you're asking them to do your wedding, your bouquet, your centerpieces, the likelihood of them doing that little bit extra for the setup or offering the candle rentals are really slim. Versus if you go to somebody who calls themselves an event florist, they double as a decorator slash florist. They may not do your piping and draping, but they will rent pedestals. They can bring in linens for you. They can bring in the chargers and all the extra details. So they become that one-stop shop. Two of the venues that I work with on site, the Hacienda Saria and Langdon Hall, they're both beautiful venues that you don't need a lot of decor. Like, you walk into a space and the first thing you do is, people's eyes pop out and go, wow, it looks like a castle, or it's an old English inn. And then at that point, you want to know that if you want to rent linens and that the venue themselves don't offer it, that whoever you're working with, it kind of eliminates the steps. Like for us, we do weddings up north. We did a wedding a couple weeks ago in King City, and I helped the bride pick her linens and her chairs and everything like that. And we did the centerpieces. We rented candelabras, like I have them and I offer them. So there's a lot that florists will do, and a lot of them will travel. So even necessarily, you have a wedding in Muskoka, don't be afraid to get a florist that's out of Niagara on the Lake or out of Kitchener Waterloo. They will travel
Okay, cool.
because it's just, something that they do.
For those of you that are watching and aren't in Ontario, that would be about, I don't know, 300 kilometers away.
Well, I mean, King City was what? It was a 2-hour drive for me
Yeah,
from where I am. We take it, we load it up, we did the whole wedding.
cool.
So,
Awesome. Okay, so I think this has been super good. At least, if I was planning a wedding, which I'm not, but quite yet, but I at least know where to start related to wedding flowers. So this has been awesome. I have one last question that I've been asking every one of my guests, except for I forgot during my first interview. That's okay. But it's so basically it's just, can you share like 3 insider tips, so since you've been working in the wedding industry for 4 years, on how to make a couple's wedding awesome? And it doesn't necessarily at all need to be about flowers. They can all be about flowers. They can just be not about flowers. You can have a mix. Just like what can a couple do to make their wedding as good as it can be?
well, I'd say the first one is make sure it's personal to both you and them, to you and your fiance, or be true to yourselves.
Yeah, that's cool.
Book vendors that you like. I mean, that I cannot stress that enough. that book them based on the referrals and how you feel when you've met them. And a third one with your flowers is be realistic when you meet with your vendors or with your florists. Know that you have realistic expectations and that they're not going to let you down and you won't be disappointed the day of.
Cool.
I don't know if any other tips I could give. I mean, just go with your gut.
Sorry, I'm just noting these down so I have them for later. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks so much. Is there, are we going to do the rose shower now or? No, I'm
The
just
rose. I don't think he got. He's working it.
Okay. Yeah, we were just talking before that Christina was maybe gonna have some rose petals falling in front of her, but
I
it was
can
kind
give
of
you a
hard to do.
scan of the cooler.
Yeah, let's
You can
do
see
it.
all the flowers in the.
Yeah, let's
Let's
see.
see. I don't know. Do you have a good shot of that?
Yeah, that's great. You gonna
One
head in?
without the glare.
Cool.
So that's a full cooler.
Ready for the weekend?
Ready for the weekend.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, just to wrap up, I guess, is there anywhere or where can people go to find you if they want to thank you for giving them this information or check you out and see if maybe you can do their flowers for their wedding?
So my website is www.pinkpoppy, spelled poppi.ca. They can find me on the website, and I have a Facebook page, I've got a Twitter account, and I have Instagram.
Are those all
So
Pink Poppy?
Pink Poppy or Pink Poppy Designs
Okay, cool.
are the two that I go under. So Twitter's Pink Poppy Design, Instagram, I believe it's under Pink Poppy, and Twitter's the same thing.
Cool.
And then the Facebook is just Pink Poppy.
Awesome.
So that's how I can be found.
I'm gonna put up some show notes and the transcript and the video and everything at indieweddingdj.com/pinkpoppy. So if anyone wants to check those out, you can find them there. And Christina, thanks so much for sharing all of your knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin. It's been great.
Okay, back to later.
Okay, bye.